Okay, great. Okay. For those of you joining us on Facebook Live, we're going to start here in about 1 minute. We had some stragglers, so we're starting a little bit late, so just bear with us for just 1 second here. While we're waiting, I've just been asking some peers in the class, how's the market? That's such a vague, what do we do with that question? How's the market? But I love some of the responses. You get out what you put in, which is very true. You get what you do. And I really want to start this turn every buyer into an investor from a 30,000 foot view and your mindset and what you believe going into your conversations and your buyer's consults. And if you're not convinced, you cannot convince. That was a quote that I heard from that gentleman who wrote the book, Exactly What to Say. Is it Phil Jones? I can't remember. Yeah, Phil Jones. If you are not convinced, you cannot convince. And so going into the buyer's consult, you need to believe in what you're saying. It needs to be internalized and it needs to be true. And to the degree that you can put emotional capacity in what you believe is to the degree that you're going to get output. And I wanted to ask a question. How many of you have been in a situation or a deal that falls apart for a few $1,000s? They like the house, they want the house, and everyone gets so granular. By granular, I just mean so deep in the weeds with the details that they can't see the forest through the trees, and the deal falls apart. And I'm not saying that that should never happen. I'm not saying that. What I want to do is to teach you as real estate professionals to take an inventory of your mindset and your education of that client from your first interactions. And one of the things you need to be aware of is every buyer, if you can set their mindset right on the front end, and you can be celebrating the fact that they're going to be purchasing an asset that's going to be growing in value, it really can help when you get deep in the weeds with the details to point them back to what the big picture is. And here's the big picture. I'm going to hand out a packet to everybody here. What's up, Stevie? Good. Boom. Boom. I'll throw a couple other of these out here. If you're watching on Facebook Live, if you message Colt Wilson, and his email is coltwilson@kw.com, coltwilson@kw.com. If you're online, you can ask for him to email you these, and he'll email them to you. All right, so we hear at Keller Williams that we should be the economist of choice, okay? And people need two things when you sit down with them. And a lot of us we are bent one way or the other based on our personality profile, and we have to work in one direction or another to balance this out. And the two things are warmth and competence. Warmth and competence. So a lot of people get into real estate because they're good at networking. And they're good with relationships. But people might not take them seriously because they haven't developed the competence to persuade. And we do need to recognize that promotion in our current market is not enough. We need to be able to persuade. And the difference between the two, promotion is I'm excited about this product. That's promotion. But what about the objections? What if someone just is so far left field in terms of their perspective on it, and it requires you to go 5 arguments deep in order to move where they are in their mindset to where they need to be grounded in reality? That's the difference between promotion and persuasion. And so we've got realtors that are good at networking, that are warm and bubbly. And then we have kind of the nerd, competent, or driven, challenging people who are a bit colder, and they're all about the numbers and they're all about the details, but they're not necessarily like getting people, they're not blending the warmth and the competence together to get people excited so that they can not only like you, but trust you as the expert. And so again, the mindset going into the buyer's consult, if you are not convinced, you cannot convince. You have to go into the consult studied. And this content that we're going to go over today should be part of your value proposition without even saying it. Because if you can do this with every buyer, they will see you as the expert and they will trust you. So there are four data points that we're going to go over today, and then we're going to get into the weeds with them. Number 1 is annual appreciation. Annual appreciation. Number 2 is inflation. Number 3 is birth rate, believe it or not, and we'll get to that in a second. And number 4 is new home starts as they compare to the birth rate. Okay? So we're going to start with annual appreciation. So when you sit down with a client, I want you in the consult, people are visual and they learn by doing most of the time. So if you're a talker, that's great. It's good to be articulate. Some people will only be listening to about 25 or 30% of what you're saying. So you have to slow it down. And there are 2 ways to slow it down. Number 1, you bring these slides with you. Okay? And it can be digital. You can have your iPad with these pulled up, but you need to have a visual. Number 2, make them get their calculators out. If you leave a buyer's consult without that client having gotten their own calculator out to run their own calculations, you've fallen short. Okay? Because if you say something in passing in the buyer's consult, the market's great, real estate appreciates at 4% year over year, and then fast forward 6 weeks and you're in negotiations and you're in the weeds and the details, and there's a $2,000 discrepancy and you just can't put the deal together, that speaking to them in passing at 100 miles an hour about the market is going to do nothing. It's just not going to do anything. We remember the most by seeing and doing, so we want to be in the consult making sure our clients are seeing and doing. So the first thing you want people to know is the long-term trend of appreciation. Okay? And that means nothing to, to somebody who isn't an investor or doesn't work with that. So you say, let me just give you an example. You can say, and I like to say it this way, you can set your watch to this reality. These are cold, hard facts. They're indisputable. People want confidence, okay? They want you to be grounded. They want to know that they can lean into you and you're not going to shake. So these are the facts. You can set your watch to it. Homes in America over the last 50 years have, on average, appreciated, that means grown in value, by 4% a year. And then you say, would you be open to, because nobody wants to be closed. I love the phrase, would you be open to pulling out your calculator on your iPhone? Okay, great. What's up, Denise? Come on in. There's a packet back there for you. So you say, I want you to get your calculator out. Now, you can customize this to the buyer's price point or to the community you're representing. So this doesn't have to be this number. I like to use this number because the median sales price, who knows what the median sales price is in Chattanooga in 2023? What? Okay. 344. Okay. So let's just make it simple. Let's just do 300,000 for now, okay? 300,000. So you say, I want you to type into your calculator 300,000. And I want you to multiply that by 4%. And then you say, what number did you get? Right? Participation. This is how it's going to stick with them, folks. You want to embed this deep within their consciousness so it never leaves. What number did you get? Somebody tell me. 12,000. All right, I want you to divide that by 12. 1,000. How would it feel the day that you get your keys for your home to know that for doing nothing, you're growing your wealth at a rate of $1,000 a month in appreciation? How would that feel? Okay? And then you say, now it gets better from there. And then you point them back to the graph because you really want to embed this into their consciousness. Denise, the graph that we're going over is home prices. And you're pointing to that teal line. You can set your watch to this. These are the facts. So if we know, not we're guessing, if we know that if you hold on to your home, on average, it's going to grow in value at the rate of 4% a year, then a year from now, your home's worth $312,000. Now we're going to divide that number, we're going to multiply that number by 4% because it's starting to compound on top of each other. What number did you get? Somebody tell me. Okay, divide that by 2, or by 12. What's that? 1,040. So not only do you start at 1,000, but that's the very bottom. So every single month, you are growing your wealth at a steady, accelerated rate. Now, you're going to be paying a mortgage on this. And your mortgage is going to have two components: interest and principal. Interest is that amount of money that you're giving the bank in order for them to lend you the loan. That's how they get paid. Principal is the amount of money that you're paying yourself, really you're paying yourself, to lower that loan amount. So from the day you buy the house, 5% down on $300,000, and I'm speeding this up because we're not going to have hours to go through this, but it's 15 grand, okay? 15 grand, so your loan amount is 285. And from the day you own the home, you're going to be paying that loan back at an accelerated rate, because interest and principal in what we call an amortization schedule, every payment you make, you pay a little bit less interest and a little bit more principal every single month as you pay month after month, year after year. And so not only are you growing in wealth from the asset growing at an accelerated rate, your principal pay down is a compounding accelerated rate as well. Okay? So if you, Mr. Buyer, we find you a home for $300,000 and you have to put 5% down, that's $15,000. And then your principal for your mortgage payment is probably going to be about $300. Okay? So 300 times 12 is 3,600. We're going to add 12,000 to that. So that 15,000 in less than a year, you've gotten your cash back. Okay? Now, not in the form of cash. It's not a cash on cash return, but it is a return on your cash. Okay? That's a pretty good deal. So, see where I'm going with this? You get your calculator out. You have them run the numbers. Okay? Pause for a second. The pleasure piece of this for a renter is the appreciation and the pay down piece. The pain now. So now you've embedded the pleasure of investing in real estate deep within their consciousness. Now you need to embed the pain. Okay, the pain takes on many forms. For somebody who has the capacity to keep buying, they're at every minute that they wait to buy, prices on average are going up. If they're a renter, every minute they wait to buy, rental rates inflate year after year after year after year. They rise with inflation. So if you're paying $2,300 in rent right now, we know that's not a fixed number. Buyers want security. So you're using secure language. We know. You can set your watch to this, right? So now we're going to enter into the pain of instability when you're renting, is that you have no control long term over what your rental rate's going to be. Zero. Okay? If you invest and you purchase a home, it becomes fixed. So you marry that mortgage payment. Now, it's fixed, but you can improve it when the market adjusts. So for you all working with buyers who were used to 3%, 4%, 5% interest rates, and they are kind of, wincing at their perceived pain of a 7% interest rate, you need to come alongside that pain and make it clear that it's a double bind, because you're going to experience pain one way or the other, folks. You can wait and pay more with more competition and less concessions, because we all know it is a fact. Notice the language that I'm using. If you're not convinced, you cannot convince. It is a fact that when interest rates drop, what does that do? That gives buyers more capacity to buy, buying power. So the pool of buyers is going to inflate. What does that mean? That means that if there were 2 people looking at one product at interest rates at 7%, now there's 2.5 to 3 people looking at a product at a rate of 6%. That drives price up, right? So you're reiterating the double bind. You're making it clear the pleasure of appreciation. It's not a theory. It's not wishful thinking. It is grounded in fact. Okay? All right. For everyone who just came in, just a very quick overview of what we've gone through so far. Number 1, you have to come, let me back up. And I'm going to ask the same question again. How many of you, in the weeds of a transaction, a deal has fallen apart for a few $1,000s? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you, a transaction has fallen apart for $10,000? Raise your hand. Okay. We need to make sure that how we talk about the market from the moment from the moment that call comes in to the consult, to the showings, to the appointment to draw the contract up, that your buyer is grounded in this reality, okay? And if you are not convinced, you cannot convince. So we talked about mindset first. You have to go into that buyer's consult with visuals. People are not going to remember what you say. I want you to remember that. They are not going to remember. You feel good about all that you're articulating. They're going to remember a very small portion, especially when the emotion of buying sets in. So you need to embed reality. How do you do that? Visuals and having them use their calculator. Okay? Make sure they're running the numbers and you're asking them the questions about the numbers. Yes?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I missed it anyway. What's the 24% above the trend and 9.3% above the trend? They're just saying that was higher than normal. Is that what they're saying on that?
Correct.
Okay.
So on average, you've got the 4% trend line, but in 07, 24%. Now, pull your packet out. And I want you to pull out these two. They look like this. Okay? You need a packet? I'm so sorry. I've got plenty up here. Yeah. There you go. You bet. Boom.
Thank you.
Boom. Yep. Okay. Does everybody have one now? Okay. You should have 4 pages in total. And I want you to pull out birth rate. Okay. Home prices. Let's see. You're missing this one. There you go. Birth rates underlying each generation. You're like, why the hell are we looking at birth rates? Right? Okay. So a new home formation is it's a metric that the government uses to determine when they think somebody is most likely to need to go ahead and split off and buy another home, okay? 33 years old, right? That is the highest, 33 years old. That's the sweet spot. That's the number on average of when somebody has a kid and now they're ready, to be a homeowner. Does that make sense? Is everyone tracking with me? Okay. So you can see, someone do the math. What year, you see that red line says 33 years earlier with a red line, and there's a big drop. Someone tell me what year that was. Just count. 1, looks like it. 66, 67, 68, 69. 72? Okay. Great. So 1972 plus 33, 2005. So what we see here, and this stat is not talked about a lot, but the reality is, you guys remember the prime lending market, everybody could get a loan during this, let me just slow down here, during this kind of trend down right here. Anybody could get a loan, but on top of that, there was a birth rate drop off, you can see. So new home formations dropped off. There was a surplus of annual completions. That's new construction. So that's the amount of new completions to keep up with the demand for housing as the population grows. See that? So you can see the household growth dropped off dramatically as new builds were at an all-time high. Well, what does that do? That's a recipe for collapse, right? Because now there's all this inventory and there's no buyers. So where are we going? If you look at the birth rate, millennial, post-millennial, and you see that annual completions have yet to even come close to what they were, because what happened is all of the skilled labor in new construction at that time switched industries because the industry collapsed. And the industry has never caught up. The skilled labor has never caught up to get the volume and capacity of new starts to where it was back in 2005 and 6. So what does this tell us? It's telling us that for the foreseeable future, given what inventory is right now, there's going to be a housing shortage. Okay? So is this one more thing to make clear to your buyer in the buyer's consult, that the double bind, buy now, right? I know that high interest rate feels painful, but buy now. Why? Because it's going to get more expensive at an accelerated rate, because the demand's not going to slow down. The new construction is not going to catch up for a while. And we all know that when there's a small supply and a huge demand, that's going to drive up prices. And what does that do to the asset that you purchased today? It grows the asset at an accelerated rate. Make sense? One other thing we went over for those of you who came in late is whatever price point your buyer is in that consult, use that price range to run numbers with them, and then filter that through appreciation and principal pay down. Questions? Comments?
Well, it's not, I think it's great, it's great to sit down and
Yeah.
the emotion. And also, it really works for investors too. I know sometimes the market rate is, sometimes it gets a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so it helps me to have spreadsheets to it so I can see what it's growing and what I
Mhm.
pay over every month, just to keep going, because the times I just want to be done. And so, you know, it's good investors too, even though the numbers are hard for investors,
Mhm.
they're getting mortgage, but just keeping that appreciation, you know, is amazing.
Story tell, story tell, story tell. And if you don't have a story to tell, borrow a story from someone. You know the easiest story if you are new and you don't know anybody and you have no stories? Go on the MLS, type in any address, and look at the oldest listing and see how much it cost. And then click up to the next one, and click up to the next one, and click up to the next one. Yeah. 2005, this home in St. Elmo was $80,000. I sold it for $145 in 2012. 2017, it sold for $267. 2023, it sold for $327. Right? That's a real story. That's a story of the first house I bought in St. Elmo. I should have kept the thing, right? I should have kept it. So, storytell can also embed that truth. If they run their own calculator and you storytell, so you accentuate the advantages of home ownership, and then you also accentuate the pain of waiting. How many of y'all worked with investors who just never buy? It's like they're always in analysis mode, and it drives you crazy. They're just paralyzed with fear, right? Have a candid conversation with them. You know, especially if it's a new investor, they're so afraid. I was afraid. I remember the first 2 rental properties that I bought. I called a buddy who wasn't even in real estate, and I had been in real estate for like 7 years at that point. And I was like, should I do this? I was just like freaked out, you know. And I'll never forget, he was like, bro, you just got to jump in. He was like, jump in. He was like, if it looks reasonably good on paper, do it. And I'm so glad that I did. I want to ask some of the more veteran agents, what are your greatest regrets in real estate? Not investing sooner. How many? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who else? Yes. So for those of you who are new, those are 3 of the top agents in our brokerage who have been the top agents for a long time. What did you hear? Not starting to buy investment properties sooner and then selling the investments that they had. Listen and learn, because that's my greatest regret too. I bitterly regret not starting sooner and then thankfully I haven't sold many of my investment properties, but the couple that I did, every time I drive by I want to throw up. I'm like, damn it, should not have done that. I'm like,
You're not having a financial gain plan.
yeah.
You're picking up and your business is great, maybe you're doing well, but you don't have a plan on what's it look like now all the way through retirement.
Mm-hmm.
What it would be when you retire.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good question when you're working with a repeat customer who might be well off, but they don't have any investments. You know, you might, buyer's console, obviously, you're going to ask a lot of, you want them talking at first, right? You're not going to just jump into this the second you sit down. So they're going to tell you, maybe Rachel's worked with this person 3 times and now they're buying a $700,000 house, right? And they're casting the vision of what they want, and Rachel's like, you know what? I want to do something with you guys. I haven't done this before, but I just want to do it. Pull your calculator out and run the numbers on appreciation on that $700,000 house. And you just kind of, you kind of let them soak in it a little bit, and you're like, and you just kind of pitch the question, like, isn't that crazy? Like, how fast assets grow? Like, isn't it crazy to think about you guys buying in the Chattanooga market? And then you ask, like, out of curiosity, like, what have you ever thought about? Have you ever thought about taking what you're doing with your personal and actually compounding it through properties outside of your personal residence? You can be more direct too, of like, why aren't we taking advantage of this? And then you start asking questions like, do you invest in the stock market? And you just kind of like you start to draw out, a financial conversation that's almost separate from the house that they want. And the way to really do this is to have a property in mind that you want them to buy. I think that's the fastest turn, is if we can slow down enough to actually have in our back pocket real properties that we can pitch. And it doesn't always, I think one of our mistakes in investing is cash flow is so good when interest rate is at 3%, right? Cash flow is great. That's not the reality anymore, guys. But what it doesn't have to be is like, well, the numbers don't work anymore. That's just not true. It's not true. Like, somebody investing cash and barely breaking even, the right property, that's going to do way better than the stock market. Like, way better. And here's the reason. When you buy if you're an investor, you buy a $400,000 property, you have to put 20% down. But you're leveraging the entire value of, I'm trying to articulate this well, your cash in is a fraction of what it would need to be in the stock market to get the same return. Because you're leveraging the entire value, even though you just put a down payment down, it's appreciating at the rate of the whole asset, not just the cash you put in. It doesn't work that way in the stock market. So you have to bring $400,000 of cash to the table as opposed to 20% of $400,000. Yeah. Let's do it.
I remember I used to work with a lot of investors, but then I have to tell you, I kind of backed off because I just wasn't seeing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying to Stevie, how do investors still buying a lot? How do you make it work? But, a lot of it in cash, like monthly cash flows,
Mm-hmm.
but they need to be looking at the whole picture on that.
Here's the other thing. If they buy today, you've got an investor, he's used to lots of cash flow, and you're like, why aren't you buying? And he's like, well, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop. The interest rates are great. And you're like, okay, you're going to be paying a lot more. Why don't you buy and take a small loss until you can refi, rather than wait? And you run the numbers on, like, if you wait for interest rates to drop a point and the prices are driven up $35,000. Does that make sense? Like, you're putting them in a frame of mind that it's always better to buy now because you're buying at a lower price. Now, people are like, what? I mean, what if the market crashes? If you look at every recession in the history of the United States, and I meant to bring, for some reason I can't screencast. I was having trouble with Colt earlier. I don't know what's going on with my iPad, but there is a, if you look at every recession from like 1930, real estate does this through the recession with one exception, and that's this. One exception. And the reason, the birth rate, one of the reasons, there was such a huge hit, in the birth rate, that was actually like Roe versus Wade. That's when abortion was legalized. So like that like hit right then. And so the birth rate dropped significantly for a season, and that impacted that along with the prime lending and the balloons and the renovations and handing out loans to anybody and everybody. So you can overcome that objection. The people are like, the market's going to crash. If you have the facts, you can be like, no, it's not. It's not going to crash. I don't know if for those of you who weren't in here in the beginning, one other thing that I said is be very confident in what you're saying to people. Firm. You're using facts. You're saying it. You're looking them in the eye because you believe it. Buyers want security. They want to be able to lean up against you and you not shake at the slightest objection or the slightest, different perspective. So just make sure you're using language of competence. You can set your watch to it. Here are the facts. Because they are. This is data. This isn't make-believe, it's data.
So Andy, when we run those numbers over 300,000,
Yeah.
20% down, so we've got 60,000
Yep.
down.
Yeah.
cash in.
Uh-huh.
So then we're saying, even if we just take the 4%, is that 1,000 a month, right? Is that 12,000?
Yes.
So in a year, on the 60,000, you're gaining 20, right? That is easy.
Yeah.
Is that, have I done that right?
Well, it would be on 300,000 with 60,000 down. You'd have 12,000, and then I like to add in all the principal as well.
And what was that,
3,600.
So that's 15,600, right?
Yeah.
Divided by 60,000, so a year it's 26%, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the better number, because
Yeah.
one thing that you hear a lot of people say in the stock market, everything grows at 10%.
Right.
So that number right there is a lot better than telling 4%.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to say that you're making 26%, that's
That's huge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and for the person putting 5% down,
yeah.
that percentage looks even crazier. Because that's 15 grand. That's over 100%. Because it's 15,600 return on a $15,000 down payment, assuming you get closing costs paid for. Obviously, you're going to have to get in the weeds a little bit for that.
And then you get well, I know that realtors, if we invest, we can write up a lot more, right?
Yeah.
We can write up more than just.
Yeah. I would encourage you this week in your conversations, dive in and fumble around. And don't wait until you feel like you really have a grip on it. And let people push back on you. And then let's call each other, and talk through objections. Or you can use ChatGPT, folks. I'm serious. Throw the objection into ChatGPT. Sometimes you can get some great responses to objections in ChatGPT. Yeah. Yeah. And just, I would just want to make yourself get into that mindset of like, why isn't everybody buying right now? Why? Because here's why. They have a perspective that's limited like this. They're stuck in a time frame and they're not looking at the big picture. That's why they're not buying right now. So, and it's our job. Like, I'm launching a community with Collier Construction in Alton Park. It's 83 homes right there on Alton Park Boulevard next to Calvin Donaldson. And do y'all know Tamika Brewer? Okay. So she's going to be involved, and so we've been talking. We sat down, and she told a story about her mom working at a bank. She grew up in Alton Park. Her mom worked at a bank. And she would hear investors, and she'd be looking at numbers because she was in the bank. And then this one guy took her mom aside and was like, "You need to buy real estate." And he walked her through the fact that this is the number one vehicle for the lower middle class to obtain wealth. It's the easiest, smartest way. And then she started investing, and she told the story of her mom retired early, her dad retired early from one conversation. Right? So this isn't just, I want you guys to know, this is not like, the sleazy sales tactics of like, let's get some more business, let's generate, let's produce. This is educating people for the sake of their financial future. Like, we have an obligation. We have an obligation to be educating people on this. They need to know. I wish someone sat down when I was 20 and walked me through this reality. Nobody did. My parents were clueless. They didn't know. So just make it a point, instead of filtering it through it being scary and like, oh, I hope, they don't feel like I'm trying to sales them into a deal. It's like, no, you're just educating. And guess what? Some people will raise their hand and say, I'm in, and some people won't, and that's okay. But make sure everybody's informed as you're sitting them down in the buyer's consult. And I guarantee you, if and when this, we get through all of this legal things with the agent commissions, if you're having this type of buyer's consult, at the end when you are telling them, now my fee is 3%, and there are 3 ways I can get paid, either the seller, I can negotiate all of it with the seller or part of it, or you're going to pay blah, blah, blah. That's going to be a lot easier conversation if they got their calculator out, make them get their calculator out, and you have visuals, preferably that they can take with you, and you can even screenshot all of them to reference back, however you need to get it in front of them. It's going to be a lot easier to get paid what you deserve to get paid. And honestly, if you're not giving this level of service, maybe you don't deserve to get paid, Just to throw it out there, like, educate your people, show your value, and it'll just be a lot easier to negotiate your commission. That's all I got. Yep. I will. Yes. One other thing I do want to offer, if you just send me an email, but at the beginning of the year, we compiled some really good data on the market. Everything from like median income to median price year over year in Chattanooga. This is really good content if you want to get in the weeds, and I'm happy to send you a PDF of this. And And you can thank Jim Lee. For those of you who know him, he's my business partner, and he is a brilliant human being, like another level of giftedness when it comes to data. And yeah, and he did the lion's share of this, so I give all the credit to him. But it's good stuff, and it is there's a huge bibliography at the end. Like, this isn't just made up stuff. Okay, it's Andy Bond at livechattanooga.com. Great. If anybody wants to stay and like throw objections or something, let me know. I'll hang out for a couple minutes. Or any objections that you're getting in the market that you guys want to process through. The best way to get your feet grounded and get confident is to be comfortable with. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. For those of you who didn't walk in, there's a big difference between promotion and persuasion. And I was sharing that the realtor of yesterday could get by on promotion, but the realtor of today has to master persuasion. The difference is promotion is you can get excited about something and present a product. Persuasion is you're so grounded 5 arguments deep in that product that no matter what objection is thrown at you, you can confidently take somebody who walks in giving you the finger and saying the market sucks and I don't trust realtors. Someone who's just promotion, they're going to fall apart. So you have to be 5 arguments deep. 5 arguments deep. And the way you get 5 arguments deep is we have to argue with each other, folks. We, as the real estate professionals, have to joust back and forth and back and forth. And that's how your sword's going to get sharp. And it's really fun to walk in to a consult having been battered by another professional and having time to recover and regain all of your argumentation in a way that you just walk in and like, come on, let me have it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just another level. Being a persuader, you have another level of confidence than being a promoter.
Okay, so I have one.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Andy, we talked about selling my house, and the reason I mostly wanted to sell is, it's a big house and having trouble maintaining it and the outside, and I really need, to have a lot of payments. So the interest rate, if I sell this one with this really low 2% interest rate, and this one's 8, I'm coming into a smaller house and the payment's more.
Hmm.
I just can't see how that makes.
Is this a phone conversation? So we're at the point where we're face to face. So we're in the listing appointment. Great, Denise. I'm so glad you brought that up. You had brought that up on the phone when we had first talked, and we're actually going to get crystal clear on the financial picture of what this could look like and the transition. As soon as what I would do is, number one, hold questions to where you have them in your listing appointment. Okay? So my listing appointment, I roll in, I do the same damn thing every time. It's you number one, you come in with a lot of energy. Remember what Jeff Glover said? His first coach said, Jeff, if you walk into a listing appointment and you throw up on their living room table, if you've got a lot of energy and enthusiasm, they're still going to sign the listing most of the time. And honestly, for some of you, everyone has a different nervous system and chemical makeup, and I'm moody, right? I'm very moody. So it's like I really have to, if I'm uptight or I've got 6 problems I'm dealing with, it's really hard for me to set that aside. So I actually have to do a lot of heavy lifting to get into that frame of mind most of the time, because I'm not a bubbly person. I live in my head. It's just who I am. But anyway, I know this is a very long roundabout way of answering this objection. I'm getting back to it. But if you're a good realtor and you've done your homework, you already know what their equity position is going in. And remember, their down payment in this market, if they've been holding on to their home for a while, they've got a lot of equity. And the equity that they put into their next purchase is going to offset that mortgage payment significantly, right? So part of the argument, Denise, if you were on the phone and I didn't know the facts, I would be driving for an appointment. I would not answer that question directly on the phone. I would just say, you know what, Denise, I get asked that question every other day. That is just the question of this real estate market. That is the question. And we're going to answer that really clearly when we sit down and meet. And then what I would do is I bring a net sheet. I have a net sheet built out. I already know what their payoff is. So when I get there, I've already internalized how much money we're working with here. And so that would be the first level of defense, would be how much equity. Now you could push back and be like, well, what if they don't have any equity? And I'm like, okay. I would go back to a needs analysis and get to the deep why again. And then I would go back to that double bind of like, buy now at a lower price or buy later at a higher price with more competition. And so I might go into now, Jenny or whoever her name is, here's what we know. Again, remember the language I'm using. Here's what we know. We know that when interest rates drop, and you could do this in a couple of different formats. You could ask them to respond to these questions. What do you think is going to happen in the market when interest rates drop a point, Jenny? And just sit there and let them have to process that. And normally, if they're logical, they'll be like, well, I guess a lot of buyers will be happy. And you can laugh about it, like, exactly. And guess what? The number of buyers is going to increase exponentially in your price point, which means the competition is going to be more fierce. And we know, based on the birth rate and based on, there's only 2.5 months of inventory in Chattanooga right now. We just know that the supply is really low. So if the buyer pool expands, Jenny, what I'm concerned about is you buying in that market at lower interest rates at a lot higher price. So what if we could create a scenario where you went ahead and sold and you bought knowing that at some point in the nearer future you can refinance to a lower interest rate? Would that work for you? And that would be like my tier 2. Tier 1 would be equity. Tier 2 would be buy now, refinance in a couple of years when interest rates drop.
Right, but then if I wait, then the price of my house I'm selling is going to go up, right?
It is. Yep. Good. This is good. This is getting juicy.
I don't know the answer.
I love this. I know. I don't know the answers either. So, okay.
Yes, so the question would be then why don't I just continue to wait, right? That's what that question is.
Well, that is true. But you're going to have more options now than you will if you wait. And what's more important? You can just put it back on them of what's more important. You'll have more money and a lower interest rate, but you'll have less options to choose from. And you'll be frustrated and you'll have to pay over asking And so it's really just comes down to what's more important to you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if it's somebody who's having issues with their body, you know, I've had that happen before.
Yeah.
And they're worried. I say, look, you might as well move or you're feeling really great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wait a few years, you know, you may not be able to walk so well or
Mhm.
stuff so well. So that's an option.
Here's another one, and it's again storytelling. In all honesty, I'm asking everybody in here, how many buyers have you had who've upgraded and you got a phone call, man, like they were upset that they like did it? I only have one. I have one, and it was because it was a marital situation and the husband really wanted to move and the wife didn't. And it had nothing to do, it really just came down to like a personal problem, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't get calls saying, man, I'm so mad that I sold and got a bigger house for my kids in the school zone that I wanted. You know, like, I don't get those calls. And so now, what I do get is regret from people that can never decide. And they're waiting out of fear. So you can push that back on them and just say, if your motive is fear, I just want to encourage you that I've had a lot of clients wait and wait and wait because they just couldn't make a decision out of fear, and they regretted it. And I don't want you to be in that position. Those were good. I'm serious. No, we went three levels deep. So 2 more levels, and we're pretty deep. Yeah. Yeah. Again, every time you're answering an objection, you're increasing your value. You're reinforcing this person is worth paying. Because I hadn't thought of that. And man, I'm glad that they encouraged me to do that. Now all of a sudden they want to pay you because you're actually giving them value.
And you're not coming across as a salesy person. Like I get if it's me
Mhm.
sitting here and I've got somebody who's trying to sell me something like I just shut down. Or if you get an offer over the phone and you've got to make a decision today.
Sure.
So you don't come across as salesy. Like you truly, you know your stuff and you truly believe that this is the best for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I feel like most salesy people, they're just salesy. It's just who they are, so I feel like I know most, I've interacted with a lot of you guys and I don't get the sales vibe from you. All right, should we call it quits? All right, sounds good.